Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to sit with this for a moment. God's favorite woman doesn't fight with words. She doesn't need to shout. She doesn't need to tear anyone down. She doesn't waste her breath in battles that were already won in heaven. Her strength doesn't come from her tongue. It comes from her spirit. It comes from the quiet power God placed inside her when he crafted her with his own hands. You see, the world will tell you that power is loud, that it's who can talk the fastest, insult the hardest, argue the longest. But God's woman knows better. She knows real power doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need to explain itself. When storms rise, she doesn't scream at the rain, she stands in it. When people lie on her, she doesn't throw stones back. She prays. When the world pushes her down, she doesn't argue about how unfair it is. She rises. Again and again and again. God's favorite woman fights her battles on her knees. She wages war with patience. She wins with grace. Her silence speaks louder than any noise thrown at her. Her dignity makes louder statements than any insult that comes her way. She knows, she knows that vindication comes from above, not from the mouths of men. Understand this. When you are favored, you don't have to fight for your name. You don't have to explain your destiny. You don't have to defend your anointing. Favor has a language all its own, and it sounds a lot like peace. God's favorite woman walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without saying a word. Because what's inside her is undeniable. Because her power was never in what she said, it was in who she is. There is a strength that doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't stomp into the room looking for applause. True power, the kind that changes lives and shifts atmospheres, is quiet. It is steady. It is sure. You see, the world has taught us that the louder you are, the stronger you must be. That the person who yells the longest, who argues the fiercest, is the one who wins. But heaven doesn't operate on those rules. God's economy of strength looks different. His champions don't always roar. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they don't speak at all. There is a confidence that comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. It doesn't need to be broadcast. It doesn't need to be debated. It doesn't have to be shouted from the rooftops. When you know you carry God's favor, you don't have to announce it. You don't have to argue with people about your worth. You walk in it. You live it. You breathe it. The noise of the world grows dim next to the quiet certainty of a soul anchored in divine assurance. Look around. You'll notice that the most powerful forces on earth move without sound. The wind shapes mountains, and yet you can barely hear it coming. The sun gives life to every living thing, but it rises in silence each morning. The ocean carves coastlines, reshapes entire continents, and yet much of its work is done beneath the surface where no eye can see and no ear can hear. Power does not always announce itself. It doesn't need to. It simply is. The loudest voice in the room is often the weakest. It is scrambling for validation. It is desperate to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. True strength doesn't chase recognition. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't plead for understanding. When God's hand is on your life, you don't need to fight to be noticed. You don't need to fight to be heard. Your presence, your spirit, the quiet weight of who you are will speak louder than any words you could ever form. When a woman walks in God's favor, she doesn't have to shout her way through doors. The doors open because they recognize the Spirit that sent her. Opportunities meet her because they are drawn to the authority she carries. Battles bow before her because they know she's already won in places the world cannot see. She doesn't need to yell. She doesn't need to fight for her position. Her assignment is secure, and her victory is certain. There is a dignity that silence holds, a holy restraint that says, I trust God more than I trust my own defense. It's easy to react It's easy to argue. It's easy to match noise with noise, but it takes discipline, real spiritual maturity to hold your peace when everything around you invites you into a fight. It takes courage to let your silence be your answer. It takes wisdom to know that not every battle deserves your energy. Some things are too small for the destiny God has planned for you. Silence, when it is rooted in faith, is not weakness. It is warfare. It is a declaration that you are operating on a different frequency, moving according to a different drumbeat. It is an act of trust, a way of saying, I don't have to defend what God has already ordained. Silence backed by faith carries more power than 1,000 arguments backed by fear. Even Jesus, when he stood before his accusers, said little. He didn't waste words trying to convince those who had already made up their minds. He understood that purpose doesn't require permission. Destiny doesn't require debate. His silence was not surrender. It was strength under control. It was power cloaked in humility. It was a loud statement made without uttering a sound. When you operate from that place, the place of quiet, assured power, you intimidate without trying. You influence without manipulating. You conquer without shouting. There is a wisdom that says, let them talk. Let them assume. Let them misunderstand. Because you know your worth was never up for debate in the first place. You know that your journey is not determined by the opinions of men, but by the promises of God. There are battles you win simply by not showing up to fight. There are victories assigned to your name that require nothing more than your patience and your posture. And when you understand that, you stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself to small-minded people. You stop trying to shout over every lie spoken about you. You learn the art of moving in silence, trusting that your consistency, your character, and your calling will speak volumes over time. When God places his favor on your life, it becomes your shield, your advocate, your defender. You don't have to run around explaining yourself. You don't have to argue with those who question your journey or your qualifications. Favor is not something you earn through human approval. It is a gift from God, and it speaks on your behalf in rooms where your voice may never reach. IT opens doors without needing an introduction. It wins battles before you even know a war has been declared. There is a temptation in all of us to defend ourselves, especially when we are misunderstood, misrepresented, or mistreated. It's natural to want to correct the false narratives people build about us, but when you know you are favored, you also know that your defense has already been assigned. You are not standing alone. You are covered by something much stronger than arguments or explanations. Favor is the courtroom where your case is already settled. You cannot fight spiritual battles with human weapons. Words, debates, shouting matches, they don't carry the weight needed to shift what God has already handled in the spirit. When favor is on your life, you walk differently because you understand you're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. It's already done. You don't have to stand in the court of public opinion and plead your case. Favor whispers, be still. I've got this. Think about how many times you wasted energy trying to prove yourself to people who could never see you properly. How many tears you shed trying to explain a vision that was never meant for them to understand. God never called you to convince the blind to see your light. He called you to walk in it regardless. When favor is covering you, no amount of criticism, no amount of slander, no amount of betrayal can undo what God has set into motion. Favor will place you in positions you're not qualified for on paper, but perfectly prepared for in spirit. It will sit you at tables you didn't even know existed. It will move people to speak your name in places where your feet have not yet walked. When you know that, you stop worrying about defending your every move. You stop giving oxygen to every rumor. You stop responding to every attack. Your focus shifts from fighting battles to fulfilling purpose. You were not anointed to argue. You were chosen to change atmospheres. You are not appointed to clap back at every critic. You were set apart to carry a glory that no earthly debate could diminish. Favor is your strategy. Favor is your defense system. Favor fights battles in rooms you never enter, in conversations you never hear, and in decisions you were never supposed to control. The enemy's goal is to pull you into fights that distract you from your destiny. But favor teaches you that the best response is often no response at all. It's trusting that the God who placed you where you are is the same God who will protect you where you are. It's believing that your name carries a weight that human tongues can't tarnish. Favor wraps you in a covering so strong that no arrow shot against you can penetrate it. No lie can stick. No plan formed against you can succeed. It's not that the attacks won't come. They will. It's not that you won't be misunderstood. You will. But favor promises that none of it will have the final say. You can stand still and watch the hand of God move on your behalf. You can walk into every room knowing that you are already backed by something greater than politics, greater than public opinion, greater than human alliances. When you understand that, you become unbothered by the noise. It is not arrogance, it is assurance. It is not pride, it is peace. You can operate in humility while standing in confidence because you know you're not standing alone. Heaven is backing you. The favor on your life carries the authority of the one who gave it to you. When people see you blessed, progressing, protected in ways that don't make sense, they are not seeing your effort. They are seeing your covering. They are witnessing what it looks like when favor steps into a situation and says, this one is mine. You don't have to manipulate outcomes. You don't have to campaign for support. You don't have to defend against every attack. Favor does what your words never could. It proves your innocence. It protects your assignment. It preserves your name. It ensures that even if people plot against you, their plots only push you closer to purpose. Favor doesn't just defend you in the open. It defends you in the unseen places, in the hidden conversations, in the quiet moments when decisions about your life are being made without your knowledge. There is a kind of battle that you cannot win with sharp words, clever comebacks, or endless debates. There are fights that can only be won when you decide to stop swinging your fists and start lifting your faith. Arguments can get you attention, but they rarely get you victory. The real victories, the ones that matter, are secured through trust in God, not the volume of your voice or the sharpness of your tongue. Faith is the weapon that works in realms words cannot reach. It moves in places arguments will never touch. When you fight with faith, you are not limited to the logic of this world. You are not tied to the opinions of men or the judgments of people who do not know your calling. Faith reaches into the unseen, pulls strength from the eternal, and brings it into the now. It does what arguments can never accomplish because it is rooted in something bigger than ego, bigger than pride, bigger than the need to be right. Fighting with faith requires a different kind of strength. It takes restraint to hold your peace when everything inside you wants to fight back. It takes wisdom to stay quiet when you could easily defend yourself with words. It takes courage to trust that God is working when you see no evidence. Yet, faith is not passive, it is powerful. It is the act of believing that God is who he says he is and that he will do what he said he would do, even when circumstances scream otherwise. Arguments aim to convince people. Faith aims to please God. And when God is pleased, he moves mountains, he parts seas, he breaks chains. You don't need to win human debates when you've already won divine approval. Faith understands that some battles are too big to fight in the flesh. They require a surrender that feels like weakness, but is actually the highest form of strength. When you fight with arguments, you may win the conversation, but lose your peace. You may win the moment, but lose your time. You may prove your point, but miss your purpose. Arguments feed your pride. Faith feeds your destiny. Arguments make you loud. Faith makes you powerful. You have to decide what you want more, to be heard or to be victorious. Because the truth is, real victory often comes in silence, in prayer, in trust that doesn't demand an immediate result. There is a reason why the battles in Scripture were rarely won by strategy alone. It was not the size of the army that mattered most. It was the size of their faith. It was not the strength of their weapons, it was the strength of their belief. Walls fell because people shouted in obedience, not because they crafted the perfect battle plan. Giants fell because a boy dared to believe that a stone and a prayer were more powerful than a sword and armor. Seas split open because a man trusted God enough to lift his staff instead of lifting his voice in panic. Your faith is your fight. Your belief is your battle strategy. When the enemy comes against you, it will always try to pull you into a place where you fight with words, with anger, with frustration. It will always try to provoke you into battles that drain your spirit and steal your joy. But when you remember who you are and whose you are, you learn to step back, lift your hands in prayer, and declare, this battle is not mine to fight, it belongs to the Lord. Fighting with faith doesn't mean you are doing nothing. It means you are doing the most powerful thing you can do. It means you are placing the weight of the battle on shoulders that are strong enough to carry it. It means you are choosing divine strategy over human reaction. It means you are trusting that the same God who brought you this far is the same God who will carry you the rest of the way. You cannot argue your way into peace. You cannot shout your way into favor. You cannot out debate what God has already decided. Faith is the only thing that closes the mouths of lions. Faith is the only thing that quenches the flames of fire. Faith is the only thing that brings you through storms without drowning. When you fight with faith, you are tapping into a power source that human hands cannot tamper with and human words cannot diminish. There is a woman who knows her real weapons are not anger, bitterness, or revenge. She moves differently because she knows grace and patience are what sustain her in battles that flesh and blood cannot win. Grace is the ability to respond to offenses without becoming offensive. Patience is the power to endure seasons of misunderstanding, betrayal, and delay without losing the vision God placed inside of her. Together, grace and patience make her unstoppable because they keep her connected to the source of true strength. Grace allows her to forgive when forgiveness feels impossible. It gives her the ability to extend kindness to those who don't deserve it, not because they earned it, but because she refuses to let her spirit be poisoned by hate. Grace covers her in moments when her flesh wants to retaliate. It reminds her that vengeance is not her burden to carry. It reminds her that her story is bigger than the momentary pain people can cause. Grace preserves her spirit, keeps her light shining when everything around her tries to dim it. There is a kind of presence that does not need to announce itself. A kind of identity that speaks before a word is ever uttered. When a woman knows who she is, when she is rooted in something deeper than opinions, achievements, or appearances, her identity does all the talking. She does not need to convince anyone. She does not need to explain herself. Her life, her walk, her spirit, and her consistency testify louder than any speech ever could. Identity built on God's truth cannot be shaken by temporary storms. It cannot be distorted by rumors, and it cannot be diminished by rejection. When a woman is secure in who she is, she becomes unmovable in a world obsessed with labels and definitions. She doesn't have to compete because she understands that her lane was carved by hands not of this earth. She doesn't have to compare herself because she knows that her worth was established before she ever took her first breath. People are drawn not just to what she says, but to what she carries. Her identity becomes a fragrance, a quiet force that shifts rooms and transforms atmospheres. She does not force doors open, they open because her presence demands it. She does not beg for validation, her character validates her. She does not chase approval, because she understands that her destiny is not a popularity contest, but a divine assignment. Her confidence comes from a well that does not run dry because it is not fed by human praise. When challenges arise, when criticism comes, when the world misjudges her, she remains steady because her foundation is not fragile. It is built on promises that do not change. She knows that battles will come, but she also knows that they do not define her. Temporary situations cannot undo eternal truth. She knows that she is more than her successes and greater than her failures. Her identity is rooted in a love that is unbreakable and a purpose that is unstoppable. There is something powerful about someone who knows who they are. They move differently. They don't waste energy proving themselves to people who never intended to understand them. They don't water down their truth to fit into rooms they were never called to. They don't compromise their standards to gain temporary acceptance. Their identity is a compass, keeping them focused when distractions arise, keeping them grounded when opportunities tempt them to lose themselves. Her silence speaks when necessary because her life carries the evidence. She doesn't need to argue her value. She doesn't need to debate her assignment. She doesn't have to shout her anointing from the rooftops. Those who have spiritual eyes will see it. Those who have ears to hear will recognize it, and those who are blind to it were never meant to be part of her journey in the first place. Identity is not proven in the spotlight. It is proven in the secret places, in the private battles, in the moments when no one is watching. It is forged in the fires of adversity and refined through the tests of time. When a woman walks out of those fires without the smell of smoke, without bitterness clinging to her, it is because she knows who she is at her core. And that kind of knowing cannot be manufactured or mimicked. It must be lived. Her identity frees her from the need to explain herself to every critic. It releases her from the exhausting cycle of trying to be all things to all people. She understands that not everyone will understand her, and that's okay. She was not designed to fit into every mold. She was designed to break some of them. She was not called to blend in. She was called to stand out, to reflect a light that shines from a place far greater than herself. There will always be people who try to define her by her past, by her mistakes, by their limited view of her. But her identity is not up for negotiation. It is sealed by the one who knew her before she was formed. It is affirmed by the victory she has already won and the storm she has already survived. Her scars are not signs of weakness, but of endurance. Her journey is not a story of failure, but a testimony of faithfulness. When she walks into a room, she doesn't need to dominate conversations or control narratives. Her peace speaks. Her integrity speaks. Her resilience speaks. The way she carries herself, the way she loves without fear, the way she holds onto her standards without apology, these things say more than any speech ever could. Her identity is the banner she carries, a quiet but undeniable statement that she knows who she is and she knows who she is. There is a power in silence that many people will never understand. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to post, to argue, to be heard, first and loudest, silence stands out like a mountain among shifting sands. A woman who knows how to be silent when the world demands noise is a woman who understands true strength. Her silence is not weakness, it is strategy, it is wisdom. It is a weapon crafted by discipline and sharpened by faith. When she chooses silence, it is not because she has nothing to say. It is because she understands that not every battle is worth her voice. She has learned that some fights are designed to drain her, not to develop her. She knows that answering every critic, every rumor, every false accusation only pulls her away from her real assignment. So she chooses the higher road, the quieter road, the harder road. She lets her fruit speak instead of her mouth. Silence does not mean she accepts disrespect. It does not mean she is unaware of what is being said or done. It means she refuses to waste her energy on battles that God has already promised to handle for her. It means she trusts that her character, her consistency, and her calling will speak louder over time than any temporary chaos ever. She knows that what is built in truth does not need to scream for validation. There is a maturity that comes with knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. She has mastered the art of discernment, recognizing that timing is not passive. It is an active decision to place her trust in something greater than herself. It is a declaration that she does not need to participate in every storm. She does not need to throw back every stone. She does not need to lower herself just to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding her. Her silence confuses her enemies. It frustrates those who expect her to break, to lash out, to lose control. They expect reaction, but she gives them restraint. They expect chaos, but she gives them calm. In her silence, she holds her dignity. In her stillness, she keeps her power, while others waste their breath trying to prove their worth. She builds quietly. She grows steadily. She strengthens invisibly. She understands that the loudest person is not always the strongest. Often, the ones who shout the most are the ones who are the most unsure. But she has an assurance that cannot be rattled by public opinion or temporary setbacks. Her silence speaks of a confidence that needs no announcement. It carries a message that says she is secure in who she is and who fights for her. There are moments when silence is louder than any shout. When accusations rise against her, she does not retaliate. She knows truth defends itself. When betrayal finds her, she does not seek revenge. She knows God is her vindicator. When lies swirl around her name, she does not chase them down. She lets her record, her reputation, and her righteousness do the talking. Over time, the truth always rises, and she is willing to wait as long as it takes. Silence gives her space to hear what others miss. It allows her to listen for the whispers of God when the noise of the world tries to drown him out. It sharpens her intuition, her insight, her inner strength. In silence, she finds strategy. In silence, she finds healing. In silence, she finds the next move that words would have cost her. She knows that some breakthroughs are not announced. They are birthed quietly, behind the scenes, in the places where only faith can see them. Her silence is not avoidance, it is authority. It says she does not owe explanations to those who were never assigned to her destiny. It says she values her peace over their approval. It says she is focused on the bigger picture, not the petty distractions. Silence allows her to move without interference, to build without sabotage, to heal without interruption. She has learned that words can be twisted, but silence is harder to weaponize. She has learned that arguments can entangle, but silence keeps her free. She has learned that battles fought with words can leave scars, but battles surrendered to God in silence leave testimonies. In her silence, she is not losing ground. She is gaining perspective. She is conserving strength. She is positioning herself for the kind of victory that cannot be taken back. When the time is right, her actions will speak, her progress will speak, her blessings will speak. And when they do, no argument, no rumor, no lie will be able to stand against the quiet, steady, undeniable evidence of a life that was defended not by noise, but by purpose. So I say to every woman listening tonight, stop trying to prove yourself with words. Stop exhausting yourself trying to convince people who were never assigned to understand you. You don't have to match their noise. You don't have to fight small battles when you were built for greater victories. Stand tall. Move in silence. Let God do your talking, because when he favors you, when he calls you his own, your life will speak louder than anything your lips ever could. God's favorite woman doesn't fight with words. She fights by simply being who he called her to be. And that's more than enough. Thank you.